Hello everyone, welcome to my guide on the Doryani's prototype in stacking Flicker Strike Radar. A lot of people have asked for a guide under the latest two videos, so I just thought I'd make a quick one. I'm not the original creator of this build. I found this build on PoE Ninja when I was searching for some inspiration from last league, and I decided to min-max it a bit this league. I'm still for sure not done yet. There's a lot of investment still to do, a lot of improvements still to do, but I'm gonna go over what I'm currently have, a quick starter look on the PoB, and talk about the mechanics a bit in detail and what you need and why this build is working. Okay, for starters, let's just do a quick map showcase. T15 silo. Build is very strong for mapping, it's also decently good for bossing. It's very tanky. Yeah, its flicker strikes are gonna be pretty fast.
Immense power. An orb of immense power. An orb of immense power. An orb of immense power. Ready to die.
Best map boss ever. I think we're just gonna... let's just do it. For a normal mapping, you're pretty much unkillable. It's a pretty bad map currently with only 125 stacks, but I've done maps with up to like 250, even 300 stacks in some underground seas, where you can just pretty much AFK in the map, you won't die. There's zero chance of actually dying when mapping. Only time I have personally really died is when fighting Phoenix or on Simulacrum wave 28 or higher. I'm currently using this build to mainly farm Simulacrum, and it's really good for that. Right, let's go into the general stuff. What I would say is starting budget, you're gonna be needing at least 15x in my opinion to even start this build. You're gonna need all of the uniques, you're gonna need a lot of jewels, some cluster jewels. In total, I think it's gonna be around 15x where you can actually start the build. You're gonna be having low damage, very low damage, maybe too low for your preference. Talking like, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 million Shaper DPS. When you get to like 40x investment, it starts to ramp up pretty quickly, and I'm currently myself at around 80x, I would say, maybe a bit more with some Awakened Gems. And I'm at like 14 million to 50 million Shaper DPS currently. A few downsides of the build. Since you are using Doryani's prototype, you can't do a few things very good, and you're using Flicker Strike as well. You can't really do Shaper, because the Shaper beam kills you in 1.5 seconds or so, because it's a lightning degen. You can't do Maven effectively. I have killed Maven on this build, but it's taken me 2 tries. If you're very good with placing the pools on Maven, it's for sure doable. And you can't really do one of the Elder Guardians. It has a big lightning degen as well, but you can still kill it. It's not really too big of a problem. Advantages of the build: it is insanely tanky. You have 9.3k energy shield, you have 90k baseline armor, which is 150k with my current flask and like 210k with optimized defensive flasks. You have maximum block with glancing blows, you have 75 attack, 75 spell block, 80 cold max res. Yeah, the only thing you don't have and what you're most vulnerable to is elemental damage, large fire hits and large cold hits, because you have no spell suppression and only relying on your spell block, pretty much. But I am currently mitigating this via a very large energy shield pool. One downside of the DPS is that you're using Hydrosphere to effectively double your damage, which I'm gonna be talking about a bit later. So you have to place your Hydrosphere every time the boss moves or something, which can be very annoying, especially on Ciaris or something where it teleports around a lot. Okay, then let's get in some of the main components of the build. We're using Doryani's prototype. Doryani's prototype, for those who don't know, your armor applies to lightning damage taken from hits, and nearby enemies have lightning resistance equal to yours. That is why I'm stacking minus lightning resistance, which is very good this league because of all the minus lightning resist crangles. I have some of my claw on my chest, on my shield. Currently still working on getting it on my gloves. So we can hit minus 200, which is the maximum, to increase our damage by a ton. Since we're also stacking armor, lightning damage from hits pretty much do not matter at all. We have 90% reduction. It's not even fake 90% versus nearly every hit because we have so much armor. So lightning damage is not a problem only if it's ground degens, because then it's not a hit and then it hurts a lot because it's treated as if we have 0 lightning resistance. Yeah, how we do damage is the Hand of Wisdom and action. Claw. It gives us 1 to 10 lightning damage to attacks per 10 intelligence. This is why we are stacking int. Yeah, in-stacking also increases our defenses by increasing our ES pool, since this is also the reason why we're going CI. Then we have the Aegis Aurora Shield. It replenishes 2% of our replenishes energy shield by 2% of our armor when we block. Since we're going to be having our flasks up nearly all the time, even on bosses that do hit you, you're gaining like 3k energy shield back for every block, which means you're basically unkillable if you do not get a one shot. This is also the reason on why I was able to tank the wave 30 simulacrum in one of my latest videos. And we're using Shaper's Touch. Shaper's Touch gives us increased evasion rating per int, which in turn increases our armor with iron reflexes. It gives us accuracy for our boot base, and then also gives us some ES for our strength, which we need around 164. And our so overall pretty good gloves. Also, it's a very easy to get the unique glove to corrupt +1 max frenzy charges on it. Those are really like 1x at max, so those are very nice to have. This last really build defining thing, we have the Stormrider boots. The Stormrider boots add 1 to 6 added lightning damage per 200 in accuracy rating. It's a ritual boot base. There are also 2 other boot bases, so you do not have to buy the most expensive one. The others are like 2C each, so it's completely fine if you get those. It just gives us a bit of lightning damage from the accuracy we gain from the Shaper's Touch. Otherwise, the rest of the gear, it's mostly int essence crafted stuff to hit either energy shield, resistances, or elemental damage with attack skills. See on the belt, int, resist, elemental damage with attacks, crafted ES. Same on this one. And the amulet is a synthesis base, same with the belt actually. Both are percentage intellect synthesis bases. And the amulet is, this one is pretty bad. It just gives me the strength that I need currently. You can definitely use an influenced amulet, which is what I would recommend for the very endgame version. You awaken an orb, Shaper % attribute with an Crusader % intellect and amulet, and hope for some good mods. But the synthesis base is definitely a very good place to start out of. Okay, that's pretty much all of the helmet, sorry. The helmet we want Flicker Strike damage enchant. Best would be the Flicker Strike damage per frenzy charge, but I sadly don't have that one. You want a Hunter base with % intellect. Currently only have T2 there, so my helmet is definitely upgradable. And it was also essence crafted, just spam some essences for higher angel shield. There is a trick on how to craft this helmet as well. And I may make a short future video on how to craft the helmet. But it's very rare that you find a base where you can actually do the trick. So most of the time you can just either essence spam or craft it with the new attribute fossils. Okay, then let's go into the gem links. First, our main damage setup is Flicker Strike. Recommended to get the Divergent Flicker Strike. It increases the teleport range, so you can chain from pack to pack better. It's very nice for mapping. Then you need a Multi-Strike, currently using the Awakened one. The bit worse version is the Divergent Multi-Strike. It gives you attack speed for the quality, otherwise just use a normal one. The Divergent is like 2x, and the Awakened one is pretty expensive. It's like 26x currently. Then we are using Fortify support. We definitely want to Fortify. It gives us another good defensive layer, especially versus spell hits. Then elemental damage with attack support. If you have the Awakened version on level 5, you're even LA Reflect immune. So you can run LA Reflect maps then. Then melee splash support. It is pretty important. Then this is a Divergent melee splash support. The Divergent version gives you more damage to surrounding targets, which I will go into a bit more when I come to the Hydrosphere interaction. And then I'm currently using damage on full life support, but this one can also be exchanged with an Awakened lightning damage support. The lightning damage one is actually better for lower gear levels. If you have, I think, below 1.5k int, I would use the Awakened lightning damage one. It's really cheap, I think those are like only 10C or so. Okay, then the aura setup. There are two different aura setups you can do. It's pretty much only budget based. If you have an Enlighten 4, you can fit the aspect of the spider in. If you do not have an Enlighten 4, then you just drop the aspect and it's completely fine. I played without the aspect for a lot of the time I played this build. Otherwise, we are using Determination, Grace, and Discipline, together with Tempest Shield, Defiance Banner, and the low-level Clarity to activate the Watcher's Eye mod, which I'm going to be talking about later. Then I'm using Hydrosphere to effectively double our damage. I cast when damage taken Molten Shell with Molten Shell that I can cast myself. Our Molten Shell is extremely good. It's a 30k hit buffer because of all the armor we have. Then using Punishment as the only curse that's actually giving us DPS. Since Elemental Weakness and Connectivity do not do anything for the build, since Doryani overrides the minus res. So only Punishment pretty much does anything. You can use a defensive curse as well, so if you want to go a bit more defensive, go Enfeeble or Temp Chains here. In the gloves, I'm using a multiple totem support, Ancestral Protector, Ancestral War Chief. In my opinion, you do not want the Val version here, because you're removing souls from your Val Molten Shell, and it's quite good to have it defensively more often. The better version of the Ancestral Protector is the Phantasmal one. It gives you 20% buff effect, which gives in turn a bit more attack speed. And the last setup is Reckoning, Rage, Culling Strike setup. Reckoning, for those who don't know, is a skill that is triggered automatically when you block. Via the Rage support, we are then gaining Rage when we're hitting something with Reckoning, and also triggering Culling Strike when Reckoning is hitting something. This is very good for stuff where you are getting hit a lot. Simulacrum, higher waves, like wave 20 plus, I'm constantly on 50 rage. So this is a setup I would definitely not drop. And then the movement skill, I'm currently using Whirling Blades, but you feel free to use whatever you like. Whirling Blades is pretty nice since we are using a claw and have some decent attack speed. Okay, quickly going over the flasks. I'm currently using a Bottled Faith, but this is not required, of course. You can use, I don't know if I have it somewhere, or whatever. You can use the 4 defensive flasks that give more armor, more evasion rating, and flat armor. Together with a Quicksilver for mapping or so. For Simulacra, I'm currently using a Ruby flask and a Sapphire flask to mitigate a bit more elemental damage. Would definitely recommend on all your flasks to get the new, I don't know if it's new, the gain X charges when you're hit by an enemy mod, together with used when charges are full. This is pretty much perma utility flasks, since with Flicker Strike you're getting hit a lot since you're standing inside the enemies. I would recommend getting 1 immunity to bleeding flask and 1 reduced cursed effectiveness. Otherwise, just the increased armor, increased evasion rating during flask effect, or increased movement speed during flask effect, or attack speed during flask effects are all very good mods. Flasks are up to you to decide pretty much. Okay, then let's hop into the passive tree. As you can see, the passive tree is pretty much one big circle since we are traveling a lot. Let's start out by talking a bit about the jewels that we are using. We're currently using 3 Thread of Hopes. All are large with -20 to all elemental resistances. It's very important that this is actually -20 since you want to get your lightning resist as low as possible. We're using 1 here to get some mana leech, some int mana. Fortification versus uniques is very good since we're doing small hits. Iron Reflexes is one of the core things of the build. Panopticon is a very strong node. On top here we're getting Glancing Blows and Divine Shield together with some damage. And here we're getting some ES and some damage. Then we are using 1 Fertile Mind to convert the dexterity from the passive tree into intellect. This is the perfect place to get the Corrupting Blood Cannot Be Inflicted on you mod. So I would definitely recommend getting this on 1 jewel. Since we are not using any rare jewels, this is in my opinion the best place to get it. Then we're using a Watcher's Eye. Currently I'm using a 10% max mana, max ES, Wild Clarity, and attack block Watcher's Eye. You can definitely, you do not need the attack block Watchers mod, only the ES's max mana is fine. You will then swap a bit around for your cluster jewel setups to get the attack block back again, or you can skill some nodes down here to get block capped as well. Otherwise, about the cluster jewels, there are a few different cluster jewel setups. I have in the PoB a lot of large clusters where you can experiment around a bit. The core things that you want from the cluster jewel are always pretty much the prestigious defense notable to cap your spell and attack block. And then you want either life leech or mana leech. If you only are using 1 cluster jewel, you definitely want life leech and just spec the mana leech here. If you're using 2 cluster jewels, I would recommend getting 1 with life leech and 1 with mana leech and dropping the mana leech notable here. The 2 small cluster jewels that we are using are mandatory to actually run our auras. Those are small clusters with free passive with increased mana reservation efficiency. 1 with uncompromising, giving determination efficiency, and 1 with self-control, giving discipline, mana evasion, mana reservation efficiency. The second cluster setup is optional and only recommended, in my opinion, if you are over level like 93 or something, 95. This is a very good cluster jewel that I crafted yesterday. It's a in-stacking cluster jewel for those who maybe know it from Wonders. It's a IT level 84 12 passive cluster jewel with max ES, int, all attributes on every notable, and I'm speccing just the small ones just for the stats. Even better would be one with 35% increased effect of nodes, but those are very hard to craft. We're talking about over 100x for one of those, so maybe in a future time. We're also using on top here 2 split personalities. Those are very good in the late game. They give you int and ES or int and strength if you are strength staffed. Since my amulet has a lot of strength on it, I do not need any strength currently from those, so I'm currently using 2 int ES ones. Quickly talking about the Ascendancy then as well, we are using Onslaught Tree and Frenzy Tree to pretty much go as fast as possible, since exposure is useless. Elemental ailments are not that big of a deal in my opinion, and 40% suppress would maybe be an option if you're going even more defensive and speccing some suppression here. You could maybe even get kept on suppression. Would be a thing to experiment around a bit, but I would currently recommend Frenzy and Onslaught Tree. For the bandits, we are killing all bandits. Pretty simple. And quickly talking about elemental overload, since we're in-stacking and do not have a lot of jewels for crit multi stuff, and we're very passive point starved. We're using elemental overload. It's just an easy 40% more. Otherwise, there will be a few tree variations in the PoE for starter, for high level starter, and for endgame. And there's always some stuff you can tweak around. Would definitely recommend looking at what other people are doing on PoE Ninja for this build. There's a few variations going around. This is just my take on it currently. Okay, then let's quickly do the Pantheon. Currently using Brine King for Cannot Be Frozen and reduce chill effect. Still have to capture the last one. Yeah, very good Pantheon since they buffed it this league with Cannot Be Frozen. And the stun is also good if you do not have Doryani's with Unwavering Stance. It's just very, very good Pantheon for us. The minor is a bit more preference based. I really like the anti-burning ground one. And less ignite duration. You can also like go fizz damage while stationary, since you are counted as stationary while you are flickering. Or go for some additional fizz reduction, but I didn't really think that I need it because of the bunch of armor that we have. Okay, that's pretty much everything about gear and such. Let's quickly talk about why we're using Hydrosphere actually. Hydrosphere, for those who don't know, creates a sphere that can be hit and then pulses if you hit it, or shock it for example, it pulses with exposure. But since it's a target that is viable to be hit, but not, you can't hit it in here or not your protected totems. But every single strike skill in PoE has inbuilt melee splash. So even if you are not using the melee splash support gem, if the Hydrosphere is exactly on top of the boss, your strike skill will hit both targets. And this is the interaction that we are abusing to effectively double our damage. Since the Divergent Melee Splash pretty much makes it so your skill deals the same damage to surrounding targets as it deals to the current target. We are hitting our current target with Flicker Strike, and we are hitting the Hydrosphere with our Flicker Strike. We are both then proccing the Melee Splash from the Hydrosphere, hitting the boss again, effectively doubling our damage. The downside for this is the hitbox is extremely tight to get right, especially for smaller bosses on Cyrus or something. and you're pretty much losing half your DPS if you do not use this interaction. If you do not like this, for some bosses you can replace your melee splash with Ruthless, for Cyrus for example. But I haven't really played around with that a whole lot, so I'm just using the melee splash everywhere and it works out pretty good, I would say. For the Annoint, just remembered we're anointing Tribal Fury, it's just for some better clear, strikes one additional newer enemy, but the additional enemy does not hit the Hydrosphere. So many people believe that it does, but it does actually not. And the last point I want to go over is how we are actually keeping up our frenzy charges. Since we are not using Farules, we're not using any self-bleed shenanigans, we are purely keeping it up via the 15% chance to gain a frenzy charge and hit from Flicker Strike itself. Then with the 20% chance to gain when you hit a rare or unique enemy. And with the frenzy on kill. This is also why the Hydrosphere is very important, since the melee splash from the Hydrosphere counts as a hit against the unique enemy on a boss, and therefore gives you another 20% chance to generate a frenzy charge. Otherwise you won't be able to sustain frenzies, and if you have everything up like this and your setup is good, then you will slowly climb in frenzies. You won't be instantly capped, but you will be rising. So I think that's everything. If I've forgotten something, just let me know in the comments and I'll either type it in a comment or make a small follow-up video if you want to know anything more. I'll maybe do a quick crafting guide sometime for the helmet if I upgrade mine. And otherwise, yeah, thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed. See ya.